Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? 1. Two girls talking about how they fricked the same guy. Both agreed his dong was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. 2. Two middle-aged couples trying to agree to a foursome. Both agreed his dong was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. You just can't win, goddammit. I could go on for days with these, but this one takes the cake. It's not a secret, but just one of many insane experiences. So I picked up a guy in a suit at around 6 PM on Tuesday near Venice, CA. He told me to take him downtown and per usual I asked if he had a preferred route and he said, no, whatever is quickest. We get going and the usual banter begins. So how long have you been driving for Uber? Me. 1 year or so. It's a great job, he says. Oh cool, where do you stay at? I answer, in the valley, and he says, oh nice, nice. So, how long have you been driving for Uber? I paused and kind of half smiled, thinking he was fricking with me. He wasn't. So I answered verbatim, 1 year or so, it's a great job. He goes, oh cool, where do you stay at? This repeated 3 more times before I finally answered it differently, saying I just started, it's not for me, and him again replying, oh cool, where do you stay at? I answered one last time the original way, but then finally, silence. By this point I was on the 10 highway, stuck in rush hour traffic. I look in my rear view and he is rubbing his head and hair profusely, like someone going through withdrawals. He took his suit jacket off and looked severely uncomfortable. I dialed 911 on my phone in case crap went down. He then out of nowhere yells in a deeper voice than earlier, frick, and I said sir, is everything alright? And he goes, where are we? I said, I'm on the 10 headed downtown. Is that still okay? He goes, yes. At this point, by the graces of the universe, we ended up moving pretty quickly through traffic. Then, right before we exit off the 10, 2 miles or so from his apartment, he yelled again, where are we? I said, sir, we're almost to your house. Is that still okay? And he goes, yes, that's fine. Once we arrive, I pull up to drop him off and he gathers his stuff, opens the door and looks back in at me before walking away, and in the most genuine, kind way, says, have a great night. Watch out for crazy people. Honestly, one of the strangest, creepiest events ever. Subsequently, I bought a stun gun taser, and luckily so, as this was just the beginning of several crazy incidents. So dang glad I don't drive anymore. I picked up this young overly affectionate couple that spent the entire trip making out in my backseat and telling each other that they loved each other. Cute. So I drop off the couple and head on my way to pick up my text fare. I hear a cell phone ring in my backseat, realize it's my previous rides, and pick up the phone to let them know I have it and I'll come back to drop it off. Turns out it was the guy's wife phoning to check in on him while he was on a business trip, which he was thoroughly enjoying with his mistress. Uber passenger here. Had a driver tell me he was changing his name to Nilram because it was Merlin spelled backward and he was a wizard. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. I know this is the opposite of what you asked because I'm a passenger, not a driver. I had an Iraqi driver tell me he was an engineer in Iraq before the first Gulf War and he'd developed a superior means of gilding furniture, chandeliers etc, which you can imagine was hot in pre-war Husseinville. Well, Uday wanted to go into business with him, but, and this is a direct quote, first Uday wants to be your partner in business, then he wants to be partner in your wife. Words to live by. Passenger here, not driver. I live in Nick and I had to call the suicide hotline while coming home in an Uber from work because it was only place where I could be more or less alone. I am so thankful to the driver for being patient while I was crying and saying really fricked up things. It was so obvious it was the last thing he wanted to deal with that night. My friend Ubers in my hometown picked up some really nice girls out on first Friday. They're talking about their plans for next autumn. Guy thinks he recognizes one of them. Turns out to be my younger sister and he tells me all about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. Drove Uber one night. It was pretty tame until I picked up two guys who wanted to go to a strip club 40 miles away. As they requested an Uber Select fare, I was happy to drive that far. $80 100. It took them 15 minutes to get ready and into the car, and they seemed cool, so I wasn't worried. As soon as we got on the freeway, the guy in the passenger seat started asking about Uber driving and things got dark. After a few minutes he started saying crap like, what would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median, and have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving? I got a little freaked out and tried to lighten the mood by asking what they were celebrating, etc. But the one guy just kept at it. I was happy to get to the strip club and get them the heck out of the car. Bonus was the bouncer at the club gave me $40 for dropping them off there. I never drove Uber again. Frick that. That is freaking scary. Former Uber driver here. Picked a girl up, a sweet girl, from a bar on a Wednesday night. Absolutely hammered. About 10 PM. She got into my car, apologized for being so drunk, and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while, with the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee, trying to drive and pull a vomit bag out of the glove box. But no, she just did that airplane thing with one hand out the backseat window. She asked me if I had ever thought about dying, to which I replied, yeah, I guess so. That's when she told me that she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus freaking Christ. I turned off my app and cried my butt all the way home. Crap, now that's a secret. Picked up a girl mid-Saturday. She was a bit upset and a little teary and opened up to me. Turned out a business she had started was failing and she was in debt and had turned to stripping on the side to cover the bills. She said the pay was good, but she kept getting really sick from all the booze she felt obliged to drink. Part of her job was making guys spend money at the bar. She hated it and felt trapped and kept asking me what I would do in her situation. I'm a guy, so kind of hard for me to answer. Tried to give her the best advice I could think of, like getting the tax office to withhold tax for a while, but couldn't help really. Only thing I could do was end the trip early. Other one was a couple of off-duty cops who didn't want their friends to know they were using it. Uber is still in a legal gray area here. Stripper girl apparently didn't know the usual trick for strippers. Usually if they don't wanna actually drink, they talk to the bartender before they open up and the bartender will give them non-alcoholic drinks for the night. Otherwise most strippers wouldn't have a liver anymore. I picked up a guy from a gay bar and he was noticeably coming onto me. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. He also refused to leave my car unless I kissed his hand. Fun times. Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his GF back to her house on Pride weekend in SF. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said take me to Castro and 18th. I said really, and he said yeah, I only make out with girls when I'm rolling. Never a dull moment in San Francisco. Never overheard a juicy secret, but plenty of interesting packs. One time I had a group of 3 guys, probably around my age, mid-20s. They seemed nervous, avoided eye contact, and were pretty much silent from the moment they hopped in. I tried confirming the destination, asked how their night was going, etc., but only got muffled mumbling in return. As always, I worked the situation out in my head in a calm, rational manner. Something like, are these guys trying to rob me? Jack my car? Did they just kill somebody? Am I an accessory to murder? Do they have knowledge of the impending apocalypse? But as my paranoia routine winded down, I slowly started to realize what was going on. Between the beads of sweat, occasional jaw clenching, and finally, random giggle outbursts, these kids were tripping freaking balls. Once it hit me, I called them out immediately and told them I was cool. They looked so relieved. I started blasting music, some Humphreys McGee I do believe, and they just started geeking out by that point. Fun ride. At the end of the ride, the guy that sat up front tossed me a bag of shrooms. Good times. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber Lyft I picked up a dude at 2:30 am that was finishing up a pub crawl. The dude was dressed in a purple dinosaur onishi and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. He wants to eat pulls and some dong. I am not an Uber driver, but I have one that was told to me. This driver told me that he picked up his last fare for the day and it did not have a final destination. The dude gets in the car coked out of his mind yelling on the phone. The guy says drive to Vegas here, and the guy tosses $500 bucks at him. That is on top of the Uber fare, which apparently was surge pricing. So the guy drives him to Vegas. From Los Angeles takes about 4 hours. The whole time the guy is talking yelling on the phone to his mom. They get to Vegas and he drops the dude off at some mansion where his mom is outside waiting to yell at him. Apparently the guy forgot about giving him the cash because he tossed another few $100 at him, got out of the car and split. I've heard this story before, but the dude was going to Bel Air to stay with his aunt and uncle, not to see his mom in Vegas. Picked up a girl who had to go to work across town. Her boyfriend and her were arguing in the parking lot as I was approaching. Girl gets in my car and she's worried she's not going to get to work on time and she would be fired if she was late. Get about a block away and my phone rings. I answered and tried to get it off my Bluetooth stereo to no avail. The person on the other line was her BF and he said he wanted to apologize about his GF and that I shouldn't listen to her because she was a crazy BTCH. She heard all of it and didn't say a thing. Very awkward. Finally get her to work and she asks me to stay in the parking lot as she goes in and quits her job. She gets back a few minutes later and on the way home tells me that her boyfriend once broke her arm in an argument and that he was going to be very mad at her and she was worried about going back home but to take her there anyway. Ended up dropping her off and calling non-emergency, but I have no clue if anything ever happened with it. Oh man, something relevant to me and I'm late. I had someone get in my car. Told me he's in his late 20s and that he's getting physically intimate with a girl who just recently turned 18. I awkwardly told him that's good for him and he proceeded to tell me that it's not, that his life sucks and everything he does to make himself happy doesn't work. He told me he watches vids of people committing suicide and wishes he had the courage they did to go through with it. He told me he's going to go to San Francisco and spend every last penny he has on vacation and just jump off the Golden Gate Bridge when he's done. I didn't really know what to say. When I dropped him off I told him that I hope things start looking up and he just said they won't. They never do and left. He also asked weird questions like if I hit you would you kick my butt. When I said I'd rather no one hit anyone he said dude, you'd whoop my butt, I'm a freaking piece of crap. Hope he got help. Not so much a dark secret, as much as a potentially dark situation. Driving around waiting for pings. Get one at a popular bar. Pull up and a young woman flags me down. Gives me her name. Asks for mine. I'm her ride. Easy enough. There's a guy with her. They are both quite drunk. She says goodnight to him and gets in the rear passenger side door. Homeboy isn't having it. Decides he's coming with. Starts trying to convince her. Despite her saying she has work early. Wants to get to sleep. But he's not taking no for an answer. It's getting a bit weird as he's getting more and more pushy aggressive about it. To the point that she's clearly uncomfortable. I step out of the car and say over the top of the car, hey man, if she says you're not getting in the car, you're not getting in the car. He looks over at me with hate in his eyes. I'm a bit tense, not knowing this kid's deal. He slams the door, walks away, talking crap as he goes. Really? Talking crap as you walk away? What a hard ass. Get back in the car. Girl seems a little more sober after the experience and is shaken up over it. Take her back home. Make sure she gets in safe. Not as scary or as weird as it could have been, but the dude gave off a bad vibe and I'm glad he took the hint and fricked off. As a female, thank you for that. I bet she was terrified. Two 40-something guys who I picked up from a bar were talking on a phone speaker, and they were trying to make plans with a third guy who was at a party with a bunch of drunk 12th graders. Exact words. One guy in my car asked if there was anyone younger there. Other dude said dude really, followed by silence. Then he said freaking sweet. Not sure as there was missing context, but it sounded like there was younger teenagers there already drunk and these older dudes were going to pick up. Two dudes discussing how much fun they had at one of theirs bachelor party. The fun consisted of the most I've ever done, and I can't believe I fricked a prostitute right before I got married. Not a driver but a passenger. This is my story. I get picked up at around 2:15 am after the bars. Older man, white Volvo station wagon. It's a pretty long drive, so I figure I'll talk with this guy. I ask him what credentials you have to be an Uber driver. Him. Background checks and all that. Me. Probably for the best day. Wouldn't want any nutballs driving people around. Him. Almost as if he didn't even hear what I said. Yeah, I'm a registered Nooks offender though. Don't worry though. It's only for little girls. Me. Aha. Him. You know who I really like though? Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was a true legend. Proceeds to talk about PSH for 15 minutes straight. Me. Aha. Him. As we get close to my house. Oh, I know that hill. I like to park there and watch the girls walk home from school. Me. Aha. Me. As we pass my house. Yeah, just a few more blocks that way. Reported him to Uber. They said they would look into it. Never heard about it again. So much for background checks. One time I was driving a dude for a bit of a long trip. Was gonna take around 25-30 minutes. He wasn't hammered, but definitely a bit drunk. It was late and he must have been feeling a bit down. So he confided in me and asked me for some advice. He told me he's madly in love with his fiance's best friend and he couldn't back out now. He'd been with this girl for years and engaged for one, ready to be married in a few months. It was pretty sad to hear because it wasn't just your average story. It was filled with a lot of subtle emotional and mental anguish. The guy went through about 5 years of ups and downs with his girl and found an innocent friend and comfort in the best friend. After a few years, he developed feelings and it was just downhill from there. Felt bad for the guy because he seemed like he was truly in love with his fiancée too, although he had strong feelings for this friend. He knew that going through with the marriage meant a lifetime of being around the friend and suppressing feelings, but also breaking it off meant that he lost the girl of his dreams. Seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and I hope he's doing okay. Picked up two dudes. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationships from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. Brockleback Uber. Not my story but my mom's. She does rides in San Diego, which is a city that loves its Navy and is where future SEAL go to buds. My mom was telling me one time that she gave a ride to a young man about 20 years old. He had been fighting to become a SEAL his whole life and ended up falling asleep on the last day or two of buds and getting dropped for the season. He was just crushed because he made it through everything before and now he would have to wait before being able to enroll again and would be starting from scratch. Anyway, during the ride he started to open up to my mom about his other passion, which was medicine, and she suggested he chase that dream instead because he came off as a very caring and devoted person. At the end of the ride he asked her to step out of the car so he could give her a hug and a huge thanks for lending an ear and giving her honest opinion about the situation. He also left her his phone number so he could give her a call and let her know what he decided to do. A few days later he gave her a call and said he had returned back home to Texas and would start taking courses to pursue a career in medicine. Picked up a drunk guy on St. Patrick's Day. He was talking about his boyfriend and asked me if he should break up with him for being a money-grubbing W. He then proceeded to tell me about the two dudes he was going to cheat on his boyfriend with that night. Just a weird set of conversations. Late to the party, but I once drove some well-dressed Russians in between bars on the west side of Chicago. I used to work for a Russian-owned cab company and I understand a little Russian. And I heard two of them talking back and forth about something one of them was very anxious about. The phrases that jumped out at me were, "This is death. This is serious. Blood is on me. And I'm not a bad man." The other guy was mainly just telling him to relax a lot and telling him there are no fools here or something along those lines. Upon dropping them off, like an idiot, I temporarily blanked that I had just heard parts of a seemingly harrowing conversation. And I said Dobroil, which is pronounced Dobroinochi and means good night. Only one of them heard me, the older guy telling his colleague to relax, and he just stared at me. Then he came around to my window while reaching into his coat pocket, which scared me shitless. He then pulled out a $100 and said, in English, "My friend, do we understand?" I just took it, shook my head in the affirmative, and drove off. I didn't take any rides for the rest of the night. Lyft driver here. Had a guy talk about going down on a stripper while I was taking him and his buddies to a strip club. You may have picked up my brother. That sick freak. I feel very sorry for the Uber driver who had to drive my drunk butt home while my ex railed into me for changing the karaoke song he was going to sing. I was crying and he was screaming while subtle jazz played through the speakers. You have been visited by the money bird. It'll bring you good fortune, but only if you subscribe in 42 seconds or less. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.